Good evening. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, August the 12th. I'm Councillor Chad Rintoul chairing this evening, and I'll introduce my colleagues from my left, Councillor Novak, followed by Councillor O'Keefe, Mayor McNeil-Smith, and to my right, Councillor Duck, Councillor Duncan, and Councillor Garnett. Thank you to my colleagues for joining me this evening, and thank you to staff for being in attendance and members of the public. I'll start by calling the meeting to order and acknowledging respectfully that we're on the traditional territory of the Wasanich people. We have an agenda this evening which includes addressing a development application as well as a budget variance report from staff. And so with that, I will look for an approval of the agenda circulated. Councillor Duck, Mayor McNeil-Smith, discussion, seeing none, all those in favor? Agenda is approved. We have two public participation opportunities this evening. We have a general public participation right now. Within Committee of the Whole, a maximum of 20 minutes is allotted, 4 minutes per speaker for public participation. We ask that you state your name and municipality of residence, and we're looking for individuals in accordance with our regulations to speak to matters that are on this evening's agenda. And later this evening, we will have a specific public participation opportunity with regard to the development application. And so if you have questions or comments with respect to that item, we'd ask that you hold them until we're on agenda item number 7. So with that, I will first call for public participation.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Council. Dennis Carlson, Sydney Community Association. I'm here tonight actually requesting to speak on an item that's not on the agenda regarding Cedarwood Motel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carlson, and thank you. You spoke to me earlier this evening with regard to doing that. I've suggested to Mr. Carlson that I'm comfortable with his comments in keeping with the general rules of public participation to proceed, but I'll just look to my colleagues to see if anyone has any concern with that. So seeing none, Mr. Carlson, I'll just remind you it is Committee of the Whole. If it's not on the agenda, we won't be addressing it formally this evening. But with that, I'll turn the floor to you for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So as you're aware, no doubt, the owner is continuing to operate the Cedarwood Motel so that people with few housing options have a place to live. Because the motel is operating in a different format, my understanding is no occupancy has been posted on the building, and staff have imposed a number of conditions, perhaps with the best of intentions, but failure to comply will mean the tenants, including families with young children, will be forced to leave that building. I think in this case, I would suggest that regulations need to be tempered by compassion and common sense. I don't need to remind Council that we are in the middle of a housing crisis. We are asking that Council provide direction to staff, that a reasonable solution be found, that will resolve any technical issues, and most importantly, allow residents to remain in the motel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. I'm going to again call to public participation for a second time. And I'll call a third and final time for anyone wishing to participate in public participation. Seeing none, I'll pause there. And Mr. Carlson, in keeping with your comments, and again, because it's not on the agenda, I think perhaps it would be in the public interest if staff would maybe just briefly comment on the matter, and then I will return to the regular agenda. So I'll just yield to see if Mr. Hissick, you wanted to make any comment on the matter that's been raised with respect to Cedarwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Indeed, the recent change in ownership of the Cedarwood site gave the town the opportunity to undertake a thorough safety inspection of the building and identify any life safety issues that we felt should be addressed prior to the former motel resuming operations with a focus on longer-term stays. We undertook the necessary due diligence to ensure the safety of the occupants as well as the surrounding neighborhood. The town of Sydney takes our safe occupancy of buildings within our jurisdiction very seriously, and until any safety deficiencies are properly addressed to the satisfaction of the town's fire department, a business license cannot be issued and occupancy of the motel may not legally commence. As the new property owner had already rented the units prior to the town having the opportunity to discuss critical safety upgrades with them, the town did indeed post a do not occupy notice on the property as a warning to the occupants of the unsafe conditions and as notice to the property owner of the town's intention to address safety concerns. We continue to work diligently with the property owner toward compliance with all the identified safety requirements. We remain very much aware of the housing challenges faced by the current occupants of the Cedarwood and many others in the community. Our goal is to have the safety concerns addressed so that current occupants may remain in place safely until this property is redeveloped in the next 12 to 18 months. We believe we're making good progress with the property owner and that these ongoing efforts toward improving safety are the best short-term solution to the continuing use of these units as temporary accommodation while the planning work for the redevelopment takes place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hissick. I appreciate the clarification on this matter. Again, this is not an item on our agenda this evening. However, we have, I would anticipate correspondence would be on our council agenda for next Monday, and hence the matter may well be further discussed at that point in time. Thank you for that. Next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. So we're looking at minutes from the regular committee of the whole meeting of June the 17th. I have a mover, Councillor Duck, seconder, Mayor McNeil Smith. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion's carried. Next item is development applications. We have a development permit application number DP 100840 and development variance permit application number DV 100336 at 2312 Orchard Avenue. The process for this will be a presentation from the applicant who is attending virtually online. We will then open the floor to the public. If there are any questions of the applicant or staff with respect to this item, there will be an opportunity for the committee of the whole to ask questions of the applicant, and then we'll proceed to a staff report. So without further ado, Mr. Paltiel, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Excellent. I do have a present, and sorry, I would love to be joining you in person, but as you can hear, I'm not feeling 100%. I don't want to risk giving that to anyone here today. I know I did put a PowerPoint together. I don't know, can I share my screen, or is it better to have staff share theirs?
You can share your screen.
Okay. Can we see that?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, so as stated, this is for a development variance permit application for 2312 Orchard Avenue. This evening, first I'll begin as well just by reiterating that we respectfully acknowledge the subject lands are on the traditional territory of the WSÁNEĆ people, and appreciate their time and memoriam and presence on the land. To begin, we're going to just talk through property context, some of the design principles that led to the plans that you see before you in the staff presentation this evening, the planning rationale, as well as the proposed layout, unit layout, as well as the landscape plan. And then there's two specific variances that this plan entails or are required to facilitate. And so I'll speak to those as well. Contextually, as mentioned, we are on Orchard Avenue. There is a laneway access, or access lane number 6, which is immediately to the east of the subject property. To the west, there's a existing one-level single-family home that also abuts 8th Street. And then, as you can see, we have the Public Works and Emergency Building Yard there off of Orchard, adjacent to the Lochside Trail and Trans-Canada Highway. Currently, the property has been rezoned as of the June zoning bylaw amendments to R1 intensive ground oriented residential. And in keeping with that as well, under the official community plan, it is designated for intensive neighborhood residential. And then, of course, there's four main key policies that pertain to this property when it comes to influence and inference from the official community plan standpoint and the design guidelines and development permit areas. Before I get into that, though, I just wanted to touch on the kind of the 5 key principles, similar to when I presented to you recently on 5th Street. I thought it would just be helpful to kind of go through the key inputs that we're doing with Coming Design and the rest of our landscape and our civil team. These principles have remained with the project since the beginning and are the things that we kind of continue to carry true in what we look for when we're presenting an application. One is that we wanted to create 2-level housing. We think that it best respects the homes within the existing neighborhood and the current neighborhood, as well as the future plans that Sydney has stated within the Orchard neighborhood and intensive residential. We also feel that, you know, as height kind of typically steps up towards both, you know, the Cedarwood property and the south side, as well the Sydney, you know, town center on the north. That 2 stories in this specific location, kind of being closer to the highway, makes a bit of sense as we kind of pick up towards the village center. Protecting trees. I don't know if many of you recall, but before I was involved with this property, the previous owners had a application for 2 very large single family homes that would be subdivided and with 2 2-bedroom secondary suites. That's not the application before you. And what I was able to do with this application is come up with a plan that really does protect a significant number of the both on-site and adjacent trees. And by doing so, by not requiring on-street or off-street parking within the rear yard and side yards of the property as the previous application did. And what this building has done is really remove that conflict. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done with our arborist and Sydney staff to get to that point. Number 3 is come up with family-friendly design. As you'll recall, it's a really important staple for myself in these projects to work to try to include a 3-bedroom building format, in this case on the 2nd floor, in order to create modest-sized bedrooms that can support a kind of a family within the district, as I know from personal experience and from others that is a very difficult form of tenure to establish within the municipality and within the region. Connecting with the outdoors, I see so many three-story townhouses in all municipalities where you'll see these little patios or decks off of the living space on the 2nd floor. Being that this plan is only a 2-story plan and we're able to have the living space on the main floor or the ground level floor, this provides us the opportunity to create an outdoor indoor area with some really significant landscaping and opportunity for folks to, again, protect neighbors' privacy and enjoy the connection right to the backyards being proposed on the west side of this property. And then 5th is to respond to the neighborhood. As I mentioned before, I'm not going to overstate that. I just felt that the 2-level design, as opposed to the allotted 3 levels, which is now allowed within the zoning bylaw, was just a more sensitive way to place density. And even the two single-family homes that were proposed previously were a 2.5-story plan, and now we've gone to a simple 2-story. So with respect to the different official community plan design development permit area guidelines, again, we have public realm and open space when it comes to creating positive usable space and green space, which is a priority and is demonstrated within this plan with all of the tree protection that we're able to create by basically placing the building envelope where the existing building envelope was from the removed single family home that was on the property. Number 2, 24.4 is the environmental sustainability, building homes up to step code level 3 and ensuring that we're building to a low impact. General form and character is ensuring that we're dynamic frontages, both on the orientation towards Orchard Avenue, as well as also creating some unique side/front yard on Orchard Avenue that really distinguishes the front of the building to the street and creates an exciting and animated presence. And finally, with 25.5, the intensive neighborhood infill residential is creating that gap between private or reducing the gap between private and public outdoor space, ensuring that there's a positive access for neighbors coming to and from the property, and that wayfinding and pedestrian realm is extremely clear, even on this property. So here's our proposed layout. You can see the 4 units, each with garages facing the laneway. Unit A, which is along Orchard Avenue, though, will have its front door facing Orchard, with more of that kind of front and center street frontage, which I can show you on another slide. But then the remaining of the homes all have separate entryways directly off of the laneway, as well as the garages. We're adding these significant trees that will be planted along the laneway, and that'll kind of create that urban canopy feeling with the trees that are existing on the neighbor's property, which can be seen on the arborist plan on the other side of the laneway, or on the east side of the laneway. And then around the property, you can see there's a number of fir trees and deciduous trees and a pine tree that we are able to retain with this plan. And then everywhere we can, we're adding trees as well, just to create those kind of punctuations within each of the backyard areas, creating privacy, creating shade, and creating an overall enjoyable realm. The ground level layout, again, just showing the different garages here. And foyer entryways coming off of the garages, with a small powder room under the main staircase, and then a modest living space, kitchen and dining area within the rear of the homes, facing that western outdoor area that I had mentioned. And then when we go upstairs, it's a simple and compact 3-bedroom layout. Part of the lot coverage variance that I'll speak to briefly is just providing a small bump out for that bedroom 2 that you can see proposed there, just to ensure that we can get a queen size bed into one of the secondary bedrooms, and also creating a little bit of difference in massing and articulation. You'll also notice that those bump outs are directly over top of the patio entryways and exits in the first level of the building, to create a little bit of overhang and a little bit of relief for individuals that are accessing indoor and outside. Laundries on the second floor. We have a little bit of storage, as well as a ensuite and bathroom, as well as generous closet space within the primary bedrooms. I'm really happy with this plan, by the way, and I know Tara's standing in the audience, and so hopefully she's hopefully get a smile out of her on this. Is just that I can't say enough good things about the kind of design principles that she applied to this, the kind of the tasteful character of this, and the fact that it's broken up in such a way that really delineates the different unit entryways, the garage space, but creates something that's really interesting, and I think will really be a welcome addition to some of those more craftsman homes and farmhouse kind of homes that are already within this area along 6th, 7th Street within the Orchard Avenue neighborhood. Here's the rear of the property, again, with those little punctuations on the second floor that you can see just above the accesses to and from the outdoor space areas. So that's looking at it from the west side. We also, the other thing is that we did go with a higher bedroom window on these ones, because again, we wanted to make sure that privacy on the second level was not going to have any negative impact on the neighbors to the west of us. We do assume eventually they may redevelop, but ultimately we wanted to be mindful of them both today and tomorrow. Here we are on Orchard Avenue from the side elevation. So this is the one you see on your left-hand side. That's the front entry of Unit A from Orchard Avenue. Again, we've added an overhang, and then through the landscape plan, you'll also see some like a pathway that'll take you to and from the property to really delineate that is the front entryway. And obviously, you can imagine an address sign there as well. That you'll notice the one empty space there. I'm not super concerned about that. It's the stairwell, so putting a window there would be challenged. But number 2, there's also a significant tree that we're preserving, which is right in front there along the road frontage. So I think ultimately the design will be well reflected within that area. And then from the rear of the south-facing side, you can see again, we do have windows, but it's minimal windows, and we do have a 4-meter side yard setback proposed on that interior south side in order to protect the adjacent trees and provide a significant tree component to the property and also enhance those yard spaces. So here's our landscape plan really quickly. You can see that we have some significant hedging along our rear property line, as well as a cedar fence proposed along the property line, which would enhance privacy and screening from our immediate neighbors. We have a very nice paver back patio, which provides some permeable surfaces from a stormwater management standpoint, but also does a really nice aesthetic feature for the different properties and creates that nice outdoor-indoor function. And then we have a series of trees that are being proposed, again, for the laneway, as well as in key kind of areas where the soil volumes can support some additional landscape screening and features. As well, we have a nice stormwater management pond that would run along the front yard of the property with a neat decorative bridge that would take individuals from Orchard Avenue to the front of their to the front door of that street fronting unit I mentioned. So the two variances that are being sought in this application, one is on lot coverage from 50 to 54.2%. Again, the two key inputs to that is just one, in providing the ground level living. You can see here that we're fairly constrained for usable space just because of the size of the property, and I would just maintain that the benefit you're getting here by not sinking down into the flood construction level or going up into a third level, it really is low impact. And what we're able to do here by siting the building along the laneway with the driveways along the laneway is really protecting all of the green space that we really feel needs to be protected, and really keeping the building envelope more or less within the existing pattern from where there was a patio and a house previously. The other thing that we looked at was contextually, we could have shrunk the two interior units and gone up 3 stories to fit with the zoning bylaw. That is something that we looked into, but ultimately to maintain the 3-bedroom component that I believe is important from the continuum of housing that we're able to support here, it still just didn't quite get to below 50%. And I felt that the change in rhythm and the height imposition that created just was really, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, to use that analogy. And ultimately it was felt that the 2-story component of this design was worth maintaining here, even if it meant a small variance to the overall lot coverage. And secondly, the front yard setback. Originally, we didn't have this variance as significantly requested, and we were further back close to the side the side yard, if you want to call it that, on the south side of the laneway there. But what we did was, as you can see highlighted there are a number of significant trees that were kind of a conflict point in the previous applications plan. And so what we did was, we thought going to a 4-meter setback on the south side and bringing the building slightly closer to Orchard Avenue on the north side was laudable, because it did maintain an interface with those neighbors to the south of us. As well, it provided a more a closer street frontage, which is actually still quite in line with the neighboring properties along Orchard Avenue. And I think it's also important that, yes, we are varying to 2.6 in the front yard setback, but ultimately what this plan doesn't show is Orchard is itself quite a wide streetscape, and we still have the boulevard there that will effectively look like a front yard and feel like a front yard from the public realm standpoint, because from my standpoint, there hasn't been any engineering plans to significantly widen the road right of way at this time. And so ultimately, I think it still provides that green space and that relief that you'd be looking for in a front yard setback. And again, from the privacy, screening, and tree retention standpoint, I think that this is maintain that this should be a supportable variance. So that's my rationale. Thank you for listening to my groggy, sick voice, and effectively that's everything on this application at this time. And I welcome any questions from members of committee this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peltiel. I will start next, moving to public participation in the event there's anyone in attendance who has any questions or comments with respect to this project. I'll call a second time for any public participation. Seeing none, I'll call a third time. Seeing none, excuse me, I'll move forward with the next item, which is members of committee of the whole with an opportunity to pose questions with respect to this project to the applicant. I'll start with Councillor Keith.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just one question, Mr. Peltiel, in regards to the boulevard in front. I know it's wider. Do you happen to know how many meters that boulevard is in front of that front property line? Or roughly?
I can give me 30 seconds and I'll pull it up and just quickly take a look.
Oh, actually, your colleague here, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, you're welcome
perfect.
to approach the podium. Sorry, beg your pardon. Yeah, try again.
8.39 meters from the property line to the asphalt.
Okay, that's great. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Peltiel, for your presentation. So my first question is with regards to the staff mentioned in the report that the Leyland cypress tree would be one that would need to be removed. It's protected. And I just wonder if you could explain the rationale for the removal of it in terms of the context of the development.
No, I appreciate that. It was one that actually I think that from discussing with the previous applicant or owners of the property is that there was a desire, I guess, on the neighbor's side as well to look at removal of that, just because it was quite it was getting quite large and difficult to maintain. The other thing that impacted us was just the ability to provide adequate patio space in the rear. It's something where if committee felt strongly that there was a need to maintain that, I think we could look at it, but ultimately there could be an impact to the patio and or building envelope with respect to the critical root zone, but it is something that my arborist is aware of, and if there was a desire to work on maintaining it, we could definitely look further. But I do believe that is, yeah, you're right, that is the one protected tree that's being proposed removed here, and ultimately I do feel that the significant replacement that this plan provides on balance is a decent trade-off.
And if I may, with regards to that, I'm just curious as what the process would be. Like you say, the neighbors were in agreement, and I'm assuming because it's on their property, they would have to do the application for tree removal. And from my perspective, I would be more comfortable if there was some kind of a letter from them or some kind in the process that indicates they are actually in agreement with that decision. Just makes it easier for me to be able to explain to people why I might have agreed with it, because would seem weird to somebody looking in. Oh, you're going to remove a tree on somebody else's property for a development. So I think that is an important piece of the puzzle that needs to be there. And the perimeter fence that goes along that along the west line of the property between it and 2306. I'm assuming that'll be a 6-foot fence.
That's correct. It's being proposed as a 6-foot solid cedar fence.
Perfect. Yeah. When I was standing in the lane looking at it, I was thinking, with that tree gone, that home to the west has windows on that side, and with patios from them, I'm thinking, okay, how are we going to create some kind of privacy? So it's good to know that that's what you have in your plans. And you mentioned in there with the pulling forward to allow for small garages. And I was wondering what you envision in terms of a car that would fit into a small. I've never seen small garages before, so what were you anticipating would be the car usage for that space?
Yeah, garages kind of move on a pendulum, and these are I just mean that these are on the smaller side of a single car garage. Yeah, if you had a large pickup truck, you would have a difficult time parking in here. And ultimately, these are for sale condos, so ideally we'd be selling them to individuals that are aware of that. I did actually think that if this did come up as a concern for council, one of the things that I could always propose we work on staff with is almost like an awareness covenant. I know those get done from time to time, just like making sure that current and future buyers are aware of the parameters when either purchasing or renting a home. Just that you don't want anyone to buy it with an F-350 and then all of a sudden come back and have that complaint. But I think it'll be fairly obvious. And again, I didn't mean to draw great attention to it, because I know these garage sizes do get they do get used in developments, but I just wanted to be clear that they were on the modest size of vehicle.
Great. And sort of parlaying into that for me, because it was hard for me to see in the designs if there's any kind of excess storage that's built into each unit. And the reason I'm saying that is that typically when you have these homes that are a little smaller, and we've spoken to them being for like potentially for families, and they come with a little more stuff than your average two couple, what happens is the garage becomes de facto a storage unit. And then in this particular case, there's no driveway, so then where would they park their vehicle? So like, I'm just trying to visualize if a family moves in there and they don't have proper storage, that could create all kinds of other problems in terms of off-street parking in the neighborhood.
I'd be happy to look with Ms. Cumming at alternative or additional storage measures that could be done within the unit as well. It is again something that I've seen in other municipalities, and I don't want to tell it there's a covenant for every answer, but that is something that I know has been looked at in the past as well, as almost like an awareness covenant, that the expectation is that if you have a vehicle, in the event you're a family with a vehicle, that you do use your garage for vehicle storage as opposed to storage, or just and then that gives bylaw officers, in the event that there is an on-street parking conflict, a little bit more teeth to enforce that with. So again, I don't want to speak for staff or anything on the feasibility of that, but that's certainly something that we could look into.
Thank you. I just have one more, Chair, if I may. With regards to the heat pumps, and this is only a question because I've had personal experience with this, will these be multi-unit heat pumps or single unit, and where would the unit reside in the home?
That's a great question. At this point, we were contemplating that it would be a split ducted heat pump. So it'd be a single unit with a split, like one header that would be used for the living space, and then another header that would be likely shared between the upper rooms. In a building of this size, you don't need more than that. And under the new building code, one of the rooms is required to be at least habitable under 26 degrees. So that is something that we need to consider. The location as proposed right now is under the kitchen window. So you see there's the sliding door where the dining room is proposed, and then immediately adjacent to that is the kitchen window. And one of the reasons we thought that it would look far better than being on the streetscape where you've got your vehicles and potential conflict there. Secondly, it gives us an ability to like clad it and make it kind of feel like it's part of the fence condition, and we've provided a bit of that detail already to staff. And second, and with respect to the fact that that's where the fencing and everything is, it also allows us to use some of that fencing as almost like your sound screening and buffering, et cetera, on that. And then thirdly, it's also closer to where the actual living space header and ducting would be. So it's a little bit more efficient. You're not running HVAC equipment quite as far throughout the homes.
Great. Thanks you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Gurnett. Next to Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I was going to actually ask about those heat pumps, because we've had people come a number of times and request variances specifically to ensure that the heat pumps would not be next to the patios because of the fears of noise and disruption for residents using their patios. And so the choice to actually deliberately put them next to the patios and under the kitchen window, despite the fact that other people seem to be asking for variances to ensure that that sort of situation wouldn't arise, was interesting. I mean, I guess you don't need to ask it now, but knowing that has come up in the past, and I would be more concerned about the use of those patios, and how it was for the residents than what it looked like. I guess I would ask whether it's possible to consider moving those. I know you said the ducting would would require more ducting to move them to the back laneway, but if it is possible to put them there with the arrangement of the garages, I guess I would ask you could consider that.
Yeah, I'm happy to study that and report back on it. I will say, as somebody who owns a property with a heat pump immediately adjacent to my rear patio area, I haven't ever noticed an issue with it. But that being said, I'm sure it depends on the unit, and probably the amount of like airflow that it's able to capture and everything else. So I had done it, but I know the company that I typically work with here has a lot of experience in Sydney, the mechanical company, and I'll have them review things before if I'm fortunate enough to come back to council.
Thank you. And thank you for reporting your personal experience with that. That's helpful. I guess my second question is just looking at the schematics, and the 3-bedroom to me says a family with children, but the fact that part of the justification for requesting the variance in the coverage was to ensure that a second bedroom can have a queen size bed, and the master bedroom is enormous and has a king size bed. What is the actual, like, what is this, what are these being built for? Who is the purported family? Like, is this a family where it's like grandparents live with them? Or, I mean, these bedrooms, I'm sorry, they're huge. When we're trying to look at these things for affordable housing, I'm wondering what data we're looking at that suggests we need that.
Well, the maybe the queen size bed was the wrong indicator to use as a reference point for the family oriented nature of them. I think that it's, you know, the 1 bedroom that's showing a twin is about 9 feet by 9 feet, and then the one showing the queen is about 10 feet by 9 feet, or 9'4". And the master, although showing a king, it does also benefit from a bump out. Overall, these homes are less than 1,300 square feet, which for a 3-bedroom family home is quite modest. You know, when you look at other comparables within the town of Sydney, even in available townhouses, both current and currently under construction, I would say your average for a 3-bedroom family townhome is probably closer to about, you know, 1,800 or 20, you know, even 2,000 square feet in some, you know, older cases. So I think that I appreciate your point. We show beds typically on the max sides just to show what the largest you could fit in, and unfortunately it's probably more of a marketing exercise than reality. But I would purport that I don't feel that a 9 by 10 foot bedroom is particularly large. It's a fairly standard size room.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I'll look around the table to council colleagues to see if anyone else has a question or comment. Councillor Duck.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Petil, for your presentation. On the south exposure, the yard in that area, is that for the exclusive use of that unit, or will be part of the entire unit's use?
That's a great question. My preference, as I look at it, was to have it be available only for the sole purpose of that unit. And the reason I say that is because they do have, like, there are windows on that side of their home that are looking into it. And so from a privacy or potential conflict standpoint, I just wouldn't want to, you know, create something where it's not, you know, not necessary. And then the other thing is, like, the ability to have like a wraparound yard there, I think would be quite desirable for that one, you know, future owner. It's not something by any stretch that I'm sold on, and if there, and I'm also a fan of creating communal space in areas where there is you know, a good benefit to, you know, the 4 strata individuals to do so. But ultimately, I'm not I'm not sold yet on that you know, that and if you've got suggestions or ways that we can create some good strata amenities, I'd definitely be open.
No, it makes sense, and then certainly with the windows that open up onto that unit, certainly that would be less appealing to have that as a common space. Does that mean that the fence that goes down the west side of the building would be extended to go down the southern border of that property as well?
That was kind of the thought, that you would basically have kind of the standard west rear yard area, and then potentially you know, the side yard over there as well, because again you're benefiting from, you know, 4-meter setbacks, some mature trees, and what we've added is some nice landscaping there. And so if there was a, you know, if don't want to trigger anyone on council, if we want to put like a communal pickleball court for the strata there or something like that, we could, but ultimately I think that what we'll find is just having some like unprogrammed space to benefit that one individual. I think, you know, I think or that one property, I think that makes sense.
Okay, then similarly, the fence would continue along the eastern border to the unit, to end at the unit, to close it off, I assume.
It's not what we had looked at yet, but that is something that we could look to. I would imagine if we did that and connected that way, we might propose like a lower fence, because I think that at that point it might be a bit imposing to have a big 6-foot along there. Like I would almost look at like a 4-foot or something with like a trellis at the top, or, you know, something to kind of allow some light in, and not because the laneway really feels like kind of like almost the additional front of house to this building, and you wouldn't want, you know, fencing along there to really kind of make it feel like it's broken off from the street. But if I was an owner there, I think having a 4-foot fence with a little gate or something like that would be quite desirable.
Agreed. So similarly on the north face, you have the sort of the rock and waterway that goes with the little bridge going over into that unit. Is that for the exclusive use of that unit? And if so, similarly, are they going to be facing the same problem with some sort of shielding for neighbors or walker by or that sort of thing? What's happening on that side?
It's a great question. No, I would treat that one quite differently. I think that I would, you know, you'd have your fence around the back of the building on Orchard, but you know, with respect to the rock garden and everything, that is really meant to like I'm trying hard to follow the guidelines and guidance within the town's OCP and design guidelines, and there's so much positive language in there about creating a really strong public-private transition and interface, so that the public realm kind of spills into the private realm. And as Ms. Cummings had pointed out, you know, we've got a 8-meter setback here from the curb, and so ultimately through the landscape and the retention of some of those existing trees, what we're going to do is, you know, have that rain garden and everything really kind of become part of that transition. And so I think that fencing it or putting something really abrupt there would have a negative impact on those laudable objectives. And so instead, like the small accessible bridge condition and other you know, other kind of features there will kind of create a bit of like a front porch kind of feeling, but we don't want to further create any breakdown by putting up fencing or anything like that. It would strictly be for the kind of the side yard on the west side.
Thank you. One more, if I may. Following on Councillor Garnett's question on the garage use, if it is to be used truly as a garage, and I suspect that's going to be one of the challenges given the nature of storage there, have you looked at the turning radiuses for cars to come off the lane into those smaller garages? Because if they are truly tight, it's going to be, you know, you don't want a 5-point turn to get into your garage every time you want to park. Thank you.
Appreciate the question, and yes, the turning radius is kind of like nose in off of the laneway. We're something that we're looked at, and because we are still maintaining an appropriate setback for those frontages as well, it doesn't seem to be a concern from both the design and engineer standpoint, from, you know, garage face and entry through to the laneway curve itself.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Duck. Looking around the table a final time to see if there are any other questions. Mayor McNeil-Smith?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Peltiel, for the presentation. Just two questions. One is going back to the garage size and storage, and indicating that the garages are small. And in answering a previous question, indicated that the width would be considered small compared to some vehicles that are out there. How about the length of the garage?
Yeah, the length of the garage, as well as, again, on the pendulum side, I guess it would be considered on the smaller side. It's just a hair under 6 meters, and your standard vehicle is probably around 4. So it would allow for parking and general access, but obviously, again, a larger vehicle is going to have a difficult time.
Okay, so likely little to none, or little to no storage in the garage. Apart from a large master bedroom closet, is there anywhere in the house in the units that you would consider storage?
There is shelving, like we imagined, a stacker, washer, dryer in the laundry room, and so there is shelving immediately adjacent to that. The other thing that we were going to look into, oh, sorry, yes, there is. There's storage under the stairwells adjacent to the powder room on the main level on the entryway. So that would be kind of like an entry storage, etc. At this point, though, bearing in mind at development permit level, we haven't gone into thorough detail yet in unit planning. I imagine that we would have around the stairwell and around the proposed kind of current living room space. We would work to find additional, whether it's like through built-ins or shelving, some sort of other shelving details, because I've seen them. Those have been very popular in other kind of similar scale townhouse developments. However, at this kind of high level, we didn't source a ton of other storage locations.
Thank you for that answer. My second question is going to a consideration that you spoke to in your presentation with regards to the middle 2 units being considered for 3 stories. And I just want to clarify something that you said, and that was, if those were 3 stories, it might be a challenge having 3 bedrooms?
Yeah, the challenge with 3 bedrooms and getting to 3 stories is just strictly width. Right, like already the width of the building allows for the 2 9-foot 4 wide bedrooms along the west property line. As soon as we try to go narrower for the sake of reducing the lot coverage down to 50% and go taller, you're stuck with probably only 2 bedrooms there, just because you don't want bedrooms that are under 7 or 8 feet as far as their width goes, and so the building's not long enough to be able to find spaces for those bedrooms in the center. So it's just playing with geometry and trying to find a functional space for a 3rd bedroom that's not in the basement.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor McNeil-Smith. Last call to committee. Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Peltiel, for your presentation. The only question that comes to mind is all this discussion about storage. Will there be an accessible or functional crawl space in this project?
Thank you for the question. It's funny you mentioned that. I actually made a note that I should look into whether or not I should add a crawl space based on these questions and concerns that have been raised. At this point, there wasn't a direction to have them, and that's just because slab on grade can be more affordable from a construction standpoint. As well, we are slightly under the stairs with the powder room on the main level, and so as soon as we look at access for a crawl space, that's typically where you would find the access, is under the existing kind of headroom that the stairs going up to level 2 afford you. That being said, it's something I can certainly look into, because I think that having that non-habitable crawl space area might alleviate the concerns about kind of like that. I call it like your midterm kind of storage that a household would typically require.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Novak. Seeing no other questions, I'll thank you, Mr. Peltiel, for your presentation. That concludes our Q&A opportunity with yourself.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn to staff to introduce their report on this item. And if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Cumming, would you just turn that mic off? There's a power button there. Thanks, appreciate that. Cheers. And so I'll turn to Mr. Newcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff don't really have too many extra comments specifically on the details of this development. It's all been covered fairly well in this report. I think we just want to comment that this is the first small-scale multi-unit project we've received following the adoption of the bylaw. And I think generally we're pleased to see that it's largely consistent with the regulations in the bylaw, and that despite the increased number of units on the property, generally the scale of the proposed development and the style of the development is in keeping with the neighborhood. So we think it fits in fairly well and would be a positive project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newcomb. And so, committee, we have a recommendation. I'm happy if someone wanted to move that. I'd be receptive to that, or I'd be happy if you wanted to proceed with questions of Mr. Newcomb, but of course we can do that under discussion. So I'll yield to committee's preference. Councillor Garnett, you want to go first? Councillor Novak?
Prepared to make the recommendation?
Sure, can you turn your mic on, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Prepared to make the recommendation, if you wish. And that is that development permit application number DP 100840 to permit the form and character of a 4-unit residential building and development variance permit application number DV 100336 to increase the lot coverage from 50% to 54.2% and to reduce the front yard setback from 4.5 meters to 2.61 meters for the property at 2312 Orchard Avenue, be forwarded to the Advisory Planning Commission for review and comment.
Second.
Thank you. We have a mover and seconder and move to discussion. Any questions for staff within this forum as well? Councillor Garnett?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one question, and it's more to just kind of alleviate some of the concerns that came up in the community during the zoning process in terms of Bill 44 and infrastructure. And we had a stormwater sort of agreement in that area that we had not put in place not too long ago, which is mentioned in the proponent's letter. And if staff could just speak to the fact that even if all these properties, and this is one that's got 4 units, because of the changes we made, the infrastructure should be solid even with these increase in units.
Through to Councillor Garnett, the town is currently having our utility modeling updated, so we're still waiting to confirm that based on the new provincial legislation, so we're in process of confirming that.
So sorry, not generally, but just to this specific development in terms of its being 4 units and how it will fit in with what we've just done, the work we've just done in that area. I think we just did some stormwater work in that area, did we not? Under an agreement with the ones across the street?
That's correct, Councillor. We did upsize the,
Yeah.
actually put in a new drainage line to serve 2313 as well as 3 future ones, this being one of those 3.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Looking to committee. Any further questions or comments? Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just one question through to staff, and that is with regards to the covenant, that possible covenant that Mr. Peltiel spoke of. Could staff describe if that would be possible, applicable in this proposal?
Thank you for the question. I believe there were multiple covenants discussed. Could you be more specific about which one?
The covenant with regards to the garage size?
The garage size. I mean, it certainly would be possible. I'm not sure that staff would be overly enthusiastic about something like that, given that small garages in
a place like Sydney are actually fairly common, and it does meet the size of our parking requirements. And you know, I think there is a level of due diligence on the part of a buyer to confirm that the unit meets their needs. And you know, we certainly wouldn't, I don't think, put a covenant on a unit to say that a bedroom is of a smaller size or something like that. So I wonder where does it end once we start doing things like that. So I just off the top of my head here in the meeting, I'd say we wouldn't be overly keen on that, but yeah, maybe there's other options.
Okay, thank you.
Again, looking to colleagues for any questions or comments. I have Councillor Keith.
Thank you. I'm supportive of this moving forward. In regards to the small variance for lot coverage, I think it's minimal, and this being the first development of this kind, I think we're going to have to be showing some flexibility with this kind of stuff as these come forward. In terms of the front setback, it's totally in line, as I understand, with what the provincial guidelines are. In fact, it's more. And in the guidelines, they talked about actually wanting to have houses like close to the sidewalk to have that sort of connectivity to the street, increasing vibrancy and social connections and eyes on the street. So I think it's a good thing. And in regards to the covenants, I agree with staff that it's up to homeowners to decide, you know, is my Ford F-150 going to fit in here? Maybe this isn't the place for me. If it doesn't have the storage space, okay, let's get rid of some stuff, or this isn't the place for me. So I don't think those are things we need to weigh in. I think, as staff indicate, it's kind of buyer beware of what they're getting into and plan accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've made the motion, and I'm quite happy to support it at this point. I have some reservations, as so often is the case. These situations are always a balance. It's a balance between meeting provincial legislation, but at the same time, trying to ensure that our properties are saleable and marketable and meet the needs of the people who need them. And I'm a bit concerned that simply because we are building smaller and more numerous dwellings on a single property does not necessarily mean that we're creating more affordable housing, more sustainable housing, or more accessible housing, or even more housing for the workforce and people that want to live and work in Sydney. I'm not sure we're there yet. I'm not sure that the legislation truly moves us or forces us to move in that direction. All that being said, I think we have to start somewhere, and this is a good place to start. I think the project is reasonable. I'm a bit concerned about the size. It is small, and in a lot of aspects, storage, garage, bedroom size, et cetera, the living area is very small. But I think that's where the government is going, and the real question is going to be whether or not this attracts the type of client that is in need of more affordable housing. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm prepared to see this through to see if perhaps this is the start of a trend.
Thank you. I'll turn to Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. As a seconder, I do support it moving forward to APC. I'll be interested to hear their thoughts on this as well. Having been a regular visitor to our active development page every day, basically, I saw the original one that was proposed on here, and this is an upgrade for sure. It's much better. You've taken one of the driveways off of Orchard, and so now they're all off the lane, which is a definite benefit. I like the way you did the roof, and the fact that the pitch of the roof is in the middle of the lot, so that the house to the west is sort of to the lower part of the roof, so it doesn't feel as imposing on your neighbors, which I thought was a nice touch. As far as the size of the units goes, we're putting 3 or 4 units on smaller lots now. That's what the government wants, and so, you know, you have to build what you can build within those parameters. My hope is that the price point for these will be better than what would have been there in the previous iteration, because I see the price point of the ones across the street, and I'm hopeful that this will be significantly less in price. The only concern I have is around, when staff talks to it, is about the utility work and around the protected routes, particularly around most of the trees, and hopefully not harming them. And I say that because I see what's happened to the tree up the street at 2374, which is in decline by my, my eye. I'm not an arborist, but it definitely doesn't look like it's doing well, and it seems to have taken a turn after the utility work was done. So hopefully whatever your arborist comes up with can be a way that salvages and protects these trees so that they aren't going to suffer any harm after this is all done and said and done. But I support it overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gurnett. I'll take a final look to the table for any discussion. Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm supportive of this going to APC. I do have one concern, but it's been addressed by Mr. Paul Teal and even spoken to in the staff report with regards to the 2 variances. This is the first proposal under the new legislation. Going from 30% to 50% lot coverage, which is what is done in this R1 zone, is significant. If we imagine all our single-family lots going to 50% coverage, it's going to, appearance-wise, but functionally, with the increased density, be quite significant. And I guess I have some concern that the provincial recommendation was for 50% lot coverage, and that's what we put into our zoning bylaw, and then out of the gate we're making a variance. I appreciate the comment in the report, and again from a colleague, that we need to consider being flexible as this comes into our community. But I do have a concern, and with regards to the rationale, with regards to, and there were different reasons given for staying with 2 stories versus 3 stories, and one of them was the compatibility with existing homes within the neighborhood. We do see 2.5-story and 3-story in the neighborhood. I do appreciate this proposal coming forward and being in compliance, if you will, or aligning with the engineer's report of the flood control level. It is that the habitable space will be above flood control level, and I think that's worth noting. But I think particularly in this development, and I was interested to hear the consideration the proponent gave to 3 stories in the middle. I think it would be much softer having 3 stories in the middle units versus the entire 4 units or on either of the ends. But as I say, I'm supportive of this going to APC. Thank you.
Thank you. Final look around the table. Councillor Duncan.
I'm sorry, clearly I'm slow during the summer. And I should know this already because we've had this come up. How much of lot coverage, I guess this is just a question to staff, how much of lot coverage calculation goes to driveway and how much is just the house, the building itself?
Lot coverage is only buildings and structures on the property. There's a separate calculation for driveway coverage, but that's not included in the overall lot coverage.
Okay, thank you. That is what I was thinking. And the reason I asked that was because one of the variances is, of course, that they've increased the lot coverage and it's building. But I think since in a lot of places we're excluding driveway, and in places, older builds, quite a lot of the ground might still be paved with a driveway. They might have a small house set far back in the lot with a whole bunch of paving in the front yard. So, for me, a concern was looking at, permeability and rainwater infiltration, but knowing that in this case, we've covered more lot and decreased the infiltration, but we've done so with living space rather than in what ends up happening in a lot of lots where we've had houses that were smaller. We've, decreased infiltration, but by paving it and putting in more parking space. So I think in the context of what we're getting and the trade-offs that we're starting to make as these type of developments come through, this is probably a reasonable ask. And so I was okay with that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Duncan. Final look around the table, seeing nothing else, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. The motion carries unanimously, and I'll look forward to seeing this at APC. Thank you, Mr. Peltiel. Thank you, Ms. Cumming, for your attendance this evening.
Thank you all.
Turning to item 8 on our agenda, staff reports. This is the budget variance report for the first half of 2024, and I'll turn to Mr. Hissick.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. This budget variance report covers approximately the first half of the 2024 calendar and budget year. Year-to-date operating results are presented up to the date of the report rather than just to the 6-month mark, which puts a few of the functions over 50% for the year, which is reflected in the notes attached. The budget for personnel, for example, is closer to 58% year-to-date. So for those functions that are personnel heavy, it'll look like they're greater than 50% you might expect. On the operating side, we're doing reasonably well for the year, all in all. Investment revenues and savings on the RCMP contract should once again ensure we come in under our overall budget. This would mean that we don't need to draw on the full $450,000 of surplus that we used to balance and to keep the tax increase as low as possible. The capital budget has seen activity on 54 of 99 projects, so just over half. Not many are completed, but many of them are starting up now, and planning is underway for some of the projects that have not yet seen any costs. We're now in our busiest construction season, which will carry through the remainder of the year. The next report at the 3-quarter mark will provide more clarity on how much progress we've made on the capital plan, but as usual, some projects will be carried forward for completion. We've included 60 detailed notes on various operating and capital items, and I'd be pleased to address any questions that might remain.
Thank you, Mr. Hissick. And so I'm going to turn to committee members. This is an item for information, but certainly the opportunity to ask questions of staff with regard to this. If you're referring to a specific line item, just help me at least and refer to the page number, please, as well as the item number. And I'll turn to committee members. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. Page 3,
Thank you.
8A, fire protection. And through you to staff, and this would probably be a question for Chief Mickelson. The mention of the department being mandated to meet the new provincial expanded scope of practice for first responders. I wonder if you might be able to just add some insight into that. Thank you.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Garnett, in 2021, the Ministry of Health announced an expansion of scope to all EMAs, or emergency medical assistants, in the province. So that includes fire first responders, primary care paramedics, advanced care, critical care paramedics. So basically the scope of practice throughout the entire province was revised, and the amount of or different adjuncts that each license level can perform were revised and basically increased. So as a result, in February 2022, these changes were approved, and about approximately a year later, the training curriculum was created. I was actually on the committee that represented the BC Fire Chiefs for the first responder scope of curriculum, and it was a kind of a long and arduous process. But what it really means, in short, is that we have more tools in our toolbox, and there's airway adjuncts, wound packing, pelvic binding are all mandatory scope increases or changes that we have to incorporate into our scope of practice. And then there was a Schedule 2 or optional scope, and those included pulse oximetry, blood pressure, blood glucose monitoring, and a bunch of different medications, being glucagon, aspirin, Tylenol, Advil, and also topical proagulants, which are hemostatic dressings or combat dressings. So we adopted, we're kind of early adopters, and knowing that we had a bit of a budget anticipated budget surplus due to some staffing vacancies, we went ahead and implemented these changes. Subsequently, the province, through a ministerial order, has extended the time frame to adopt these changes to next year. But nevertheless, we've incorporated them and we hit the ground running, and we're ahead of most. So that it was primarily the time for training, as well as purchasing a lot of the equipment and medications to get to this expanded scope, represent the approximately additional $29,000.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Mickelson, and thank you, Councillor Garnett. Looking at my colleagues, any further questions? Seeing none, this is received and it is on our agenda, and so at this point, I'll look for a call for adjourn. Councillor Duck, Councillor Novak, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you to members of the public for your attendance and for viewing. We are adjourned.